Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tracy Navichoke, and I am the Program Manager for the Stanford Global Digital Policy Incubator. I'm happy to be here to be presenting this wonderful program, Silicon Valley Venture Day. Welcome to all. And as we trickle in and everyone takes a seat, I'd like to start by playing a video from the White House by Dr. Arati Prakbar. So please take a look at the screen, and then Eileen will come up here to introduce the program. Thank you all for coming.
Hello to everyone who's joining us today or virtually. My name is Arati Prabhakar, and I am Director of the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy. In December of 2021, President Biden hosted the Summit for Democracy, and in that room were more than 100 world leaders and activists, trade unionists, other members of civil society, academia, and industry, and the President asked them to strengthen the guardrails of democracy and to drive reforms to make transparent, accountable governments, because no democracy is perfect. It never happens by accident, but democracy must be renewed with every generation. The Summit for Democracy called on participants to commit to concrete ways to push back against authoritarianism, to fight corruption, and to promote and protect human rights. Most importantly, the initiative called on all of us to act in support of democracy, and that's what we're doing in the United States. To lead by example, we're committed to a series of actions outlined in the Presidential Initiative for Democratic Renewal. One of its 5 key pillars is advancing technology for democracy. The United States is committed to ensuring that the internet, artificial intelligence, and other technologies are developed and used in ways that support and reinforce democratic values by preserving our rights and treating everyone equitably. And I'd like to give you 2 examples. The United States embraces a vision of an internet that is open, free, global, interoperable, reliable, and secure. And related, we also recently released our blueprint for an AI Bill of Rights, which addresses biases and discrimination when algorithms are used. We are committed to protecting and respecting human rights online and across the digital ecosystem. To further turn our U.S. commitment into action, we want to incentivize innovation in technologies that make it easier to advance democratic values. And that's why the White House announced at the Summit for Democracy a series of international grand challenges on democracy-affirming technologies. These will allocate awards for those who build democracy-affirming technologies, for example, privacy-enhancing advancements. And we're therefore so pleased that IE University in Madrid took the initiative to run this series of Venture Day competitions as part of the Tech4Democracy initiative in partnership with the State Department through the U.S. Embassy in Madrid. This initiative aims to support global entrepreneurs who are developing these kinds of democracy-affirming technologies. The Venture Day today is a key step in powering this initiative. Its success depends on all of you to seize this opportunity and to contribute to this effort. When we bring together researchers and innovators and investors and entrepreneurs, we hope to see innovations built and advanced that embed democratic values at every stage of their development and use, from fighting misinformation to advancing government transparency. We know that science and technology can support the values that we hold so dear and drive us closer to our goals. Because we know way too well that technology is not inherently democracy affirming, we have to choose to build it and use it in ways that reaffirm democratic values. We have to choose to be participatory and inclusive by design. We have to choose to use it in ways that shield and advance privacy and civil liberties and civil rights. And we have to choose to apply it in ways that protect and promote human rights. It's up to us. For example, privacy-enhancing technologies can enable much more collaboration across entities and borders to help tackle shared challenges, from healthcare to climate change to corruption. And finally, developing technologies for democracy requires engaging with people around the world to make sure that innovation actually delivers and is designed for and tested by those who will eventually use it. And that's why it's so important for these venture days to take place in every region of the world and to harness your insights and creativity and entrepreneurship wherever you may live. We're currently in the year of action between the first and second Summit for Democracy. The time to act is now. The Tech4Democracy initiative offers entrepreneurs an opportunity to come together to ensure technology works for and not against democracy. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to hearing your ideas.
Welcome to this Silicon Valley Venture Day. We are so happy this day has finally arrived. A lot of work has gone into it. My name is Eileen Donahoe. I'm the Executive Director of the Global Digital Policy Incubator at Stanford Cyber Policy Center. And on behalf of Larry Diamond, Tracy Novichoke, our GDPI team, we just want to say thank you to everybody for being here. As you just heard, this Silicon Valley Venture Day is the North American component of a 5-continent global entrepreneurship challenge, all of which stems from the US Summit for Democracy, which was held in December 2021, where a year of action was set in motion, and it will culminate in a second Summit for Democracy in the first half of 2023, and we hope to hear more about that today. As many of you may know, the Biden administration has made renewal of democracy one of its signature foreign policy objectives. And while a great deal of intellectual energy has been focused on the detrimental effects of tech on democracy, the goal of this initiative is to showcase the beneficial applications of technology, to spur innovation, entrepreneurship, and investment in technologies that support democracy. We have an amazing group of entrepreneurs who have made it through the semifinals to compete here today. The winner will gain a spot in the final global competition, along with the winners from South America, Europe, Africa, and Asia. And we also have a remarkable panel of judges who will be introduced shortly. But before we start, let me convey deep thanks to IE University, the primary lead for the entire Global Entrepreneurship Challenge. Thank you for inviting us to help host this event. It has been really wonderful to work with all of you over the past several months. We also want to thank the U.S. Department of State and Scott Busby for joining us in person today, and thank USAID for making it possible for Administrator Samantha Power to join us as a keynote speaker. And finally, we want to thank Microsoft for your sponsorship and all your efforts to defend democracy. So we're going to try to run a really tight show, and I want to now turn this over to Irene Blasquez, who is the Director of the Center for Governance of Change at IE University.
Good morning, everyone. On behalf of IE University, Madrid, Spain, it is also my pleasure to welcome you all to this Venture Day, thanks to the support of the Global Digital Policy Incubator and the excellent work of its team, namely Professor Eileen Donahoe and Tracy Novichoke. For those of you attending this event who are not familiar with Tech4Democracy, it has already been said, but I'm going to repeat it. It is an IE University-led global initiative in partnership with the US Department of State that was embedded in the Summits for Democracy launched by President Biden in December 2021. The ultimate goal of this initiative is to mobilize different communities, international organizations, government, businesses, innovators, investors, academia, in order to, on the one hand, explain why democracy matters. This is particularly important in times where mega threats are endangering our future. These are largely explained by technological disruption, or at least accelerated by it. Autocrats and populists around the world are exploiting these rapid changes brought about by new technologies to undermine democratic systems. New technologies impact not only in the conditions of prosperity, but in the equilibrium of powers and the principles guiding politics as well. And on the other hand, the objective of Tech4Democracy is to devise avenues on how democracy can be strengthened through technology in a way that it does not only accommodate technological disruption, but also identifies in advance gaps where technology can better reinforce democratic ideals of check and balances, respect of political rights and civil liberties, and informed debate. With that in mind, Tech4Democracy is running a global entrepreneurship challenge. Professor Eileen Donahoe referred to it. And on top of that, we are developing applied research to map the field of democracy-affirming technologies so that we can assist decision makers. We will address issues such as the geopolitics of technology, the role of governments and tech companies, or disinformation. All this to help rethink our social contract. The future cannot be predicted, but futures can be invented, as Dennis Gabor said. It is up to us to anticipate how the use of technology can serve our rights and principles, and to determine the steps that need to be taken to guarantee that democracy as a political system thrives. Time is of the essence, and universities have a crucial role to play. I would like to extend our deep gratitude to our partners and those who, with their participation and support, innovators, investors, are helping the initiative grow. Special thanks go to Microsoft for your very generous support. Thank you very much for being here today, Laila. And thank you to the organizations that have joined the initiative since its launch. The Universidad de los Andes in Bogotá, Colombia, the Monk School of Global Affairs at the University of Toronto, the European University Institute in Florence, the Inter-American Development Bank, Radical Exchange, GitHub, Gitcoin, and of course, the fantastic Stanford Global Digital Policy Incubator, who have made this possible. As you can see, we have been gaining momentum and crucial partners. In the words of the poet Virgilio, vires, acquirit, eundo. We gather strength as we go. If we want democracy to succeed in continuing to deliver global public goods, we must align technology with the best interest of humankind. We hope this competition contributes to it, and we thank you all for coming here. And now it is my big pleasure to introduce you to Laila Tretikov, Deputy Chief Officer, Deputy Chief, I was about to finish right, but Deputy Chief Technology Officer at Microsoft. The floor is all yours. Laila, thank you so much again.
Thank you so much, Irene. And thank you, IE University, for spearheading this really important initiative. Thank you to the Department of State for supporting it and being our partner. And of course, it's a true honor to be here at Stanford. Representing Microsoft, a really global player in this private-public public-private cooperation, partnership to safeguard and defend democratic values for all of us here at this very, very critical time in the world. I have to tell you, this plight is really personal to me. Democracy is very personal to me. I learned the meaning of the word freedom when I was 5 years old. I was just about to go into school. And my father pulled me inside. Before my first day, he called me into the kitchen, which is where we had all really serious conversations. And he told me, Laila, anything that we say in this house, you cannot repeat in school. In fact, you cannot repeat it anywhere outside of this little kitchen space. And if you do, it's very likely that you will never see me or your mother ever again. So for a 5-year-old, it's probably my earliest real strong memory of my father and my home. It's also my first visceral recognition that I was not free, that my family was not free, that my country was not free. It was not a life I wanted to lead. So I left when I was 15. I left alone. I went to New York. And I completely changed my life. And it's lucky for me because the region that I come from, I grew up in Moscow in a family that is half Ukrainian, half Russian, is completely torn by the war today, not in the least because of the failure of the democratic process, because of the failures in the reverse that we went back to from the advances that we had in the 80s. We had amazing advances back then, and yet here we are today in this conflict. Why? Because democracy and because freedom is not really free. I can't tell you how much I felt, how much responsibility is on our shoulders for the freedoms that we have in this country. And this responsibility we must carry with you as individuals and as institutions. It gives us incredible opportunities. I started my first company here in Silicon Valley by the time I was 19. I'm here today in front of you representing and being really proud about the company that I work for. Because freedom is not free and because technology is not innately good, we have to ensure that we tend to it, that we spend time, we spend energy, and we spend money to make sure that all of that technology is used for good. As Microsoft, we noticed a few years ago that democracy was taking the wrong turn. In fact, since 2006, the index, the Free House Index, has been pointing in the wrong direction. So a couple of years ago, about 4 years ago, just ahead of the 2019 elections, we established what we call Democracy Forward initiatives that has 3 core pillars. One is to protect the actual democratic process, meaning elections. And you probably have heard, in fact, we know this, that half of the democratic world in that year had tampering with their election processes. 16 states in the United States had tampering. Microsoft sits as one of the largest companies that is responsible for cybersecurity. We see trillions of signals every day. So we decided to apply our know-how in this segment to help the democratic process. So we established 2 different initiatives. One is called the Account Guard. That is software to help detect threats for organizations that are supporting the democratic process. The other one is called Election Guard. That is a free and open source software to actually ensure that the elections are not fraudulent, that they're not tampered with. Open source is really important here because the software itself is critical, right? Because we can tamper with the software. The second pillar of our initiative is promoting healthy and information systems. We just heard that universities are incredibly important. Why? Because this is where we learn critical thinking. This is where we learn scientific method. This is where we learn do not trust anything that you just hear out there. But not everybody goes through the university. In fact, when I was working for Wikipedia, we knew that the hardest articles to write and also the most truthful are the ones that the most contended because of the scientific process, because the pressure from multiple opinions and multiple dimensions actually refine the content to the barest of the truth. They create sort of a diamond of content. So that's really important. So protecting journalism, protecting journalists, protecting what it means to actually distill and bring the truth to all of us is so incredibly critical. We stand behind that, and we have multiple programs to support that. But it's a race condition. we are facing a runaway technological challenge, including AI. And most of you are probably familiar with deepfakes, which are now actually exceeding any of our expectations. It is a combination of different type and proliferation of different types of models that allow us now to basically create synthetic histories. You can put anybody in any time, in any background, and make them say anything. How do we deal with that? How do we live in a world where we do not know what the truth is? Again, the technology must be here to ensure that the provenance of this information is accurate. And this is why we're working with news agencies like BBC and the New York Times to ensure that all of the content that is actually produced by real journalism is there protected and marked as such. And finally, the last pillar of this is the corporate civic responsibility. Some of you may know that actually people trust the companies that they work for more than they trust the news out there. So it's really important for corporates to be incredibly responsible in what they say and how they say and how they deliver information to the people that work in their organizations. And for those of you who have your own startups, you know this more than anybody else, because your team is looking to you oftentimes for guidance that is outside just the technology or the product that you're building. And for that, we at Microsoft try to not only do this internally, but also bring this technology to our partners. So I am really excited to be here today, if you cannot tell. And I can tell you much more about what Microsoft is doing, but it's not about Microsoft here. This is all about you. It's about what you are going to build. Because no matter how great these big companies are, the real innovation, the amazing stuff is going to come out of your heads. You are the future. You are the generation who is here and who can make the difference. And you actually are the ones who understand where we are with the technological process much better than anybody else, because you live it. And you live it with the fresh, open minds that you have today. So I'm extremely excited for this Venture Day. I'm excited to see all of your presentations. And I wish you good luck. And I'm just really excited to be here and be able to sponsor it on behalf of Microsoft and the Startup Founders Hub. Thank you.
Okay, so one last very short step before we get to the competition. We want to take a minute to give you a chance to meet the judges. Together, they bring a remarkable diversity of perspectives from different North American geographies, including Canada, Mexico, Panama, and the United States. And they also have a wide range of different professional experience as diplomats, entrepreneurs, investors, academics, and business leaders. So we just asked each of them to take a minute or two to do a brief self-introduction about their own professional and cultural backgrounds and their views on the potential of technology to support democracy. And we will start right here with Jeff Ralston.
I guess my cultural background is pretty boring. I'm the American. I don't know if I'm a token American here. I've been a technologist, a tech executive for many years at some of the most iconic Silicon Valley companies, starting with HP, Yahoo, and Apple. Can everyone hear me? Yeah. Okay. So I've also been around, because I've been around for a while, through some of the most important transitions in technology we've had in Silicon Valley, through the early computers that we built at HP, through the laser and inkjet printers that were developed there. At Yahoo, we built some of the first web-based services, including Yahoo Mail. And at Apple, I didn't spend that much time at Apple, but I was there right as the iPad was being released. And we have an iPad right here, so which is good news. But really, I've always considered myself to be an entrepreneur, and I've been an entrepreneur several times over, and sold a company to Yahoo, and I sold a company to Apple. And my most recent startup was a technology-focused accelerator called Imagine K-12. And I've really, especially since then, thought hard on how technology can make a positive difference in people's lives. Most recently, I've been at Y Combinator, really the original startup accelerator. I've been there for over 10 years, for the last 3.5 as president. And we've actually funded some really notable government-focused companies like Vote.org, Democracy OS, Recidiviz, Voting Works, companies that themselves are trying to make a difference by connecting people with technology to government or solving problems that people have that are related to to society. I think technology is getting a pretty bad rap today. Even started off with thinking about all the ways that technology can make life worse instead of life better. It's a double-edged sword. It can lead to social isolation and groupthink and confirmation bias, and can provide tools for authoritarians to do the opposite of what one might want. But the potential for technology to connect people with the services that matter to them, I think is enormous. And what is government for if it's not to provide services to its citizens? Often those services have been provided in pretty clunky, old-fashioned ways. And when technology is used, it's not always the best technology. Most of us remember in the United States the first rollout of the Affordable Care Act online and what a disaster that was. But there is potential to make government more accountable, more representative, better by the smart use of technology, I think. And I guess I'll just sum up by saying that's why I'm here today. I'm really optimistic. I think we have taken so many things for granted in the United States. Excellent public education, universal suffrage, acceptance of election results, facts. Technology has sometimes played a negative role in the degradation of those ideals. But I think that it can be far more powerful in a positive role. And I'm looking forward to seeing the companies here are playing a role in that. Thanks.
Great. Juan Jose.
I 5 months ago concluded a 35 years long diplomatic career. Throughout those years, I had the enormous, I should say, pleasure and responsibility of working globally on human rights, democracy. Years ago, then Ambassador Eileen Donahoe and myself joined forces in the Human Rights Council precisely to pursue these ideals, to make them global, to make them universal, and to push countries to accept them, and also to encourage societies to be more demanding, more impatient, less flexible with governments, so governments could actually deliver what they were supposed to deliver. I also worked a lot on technology. I wish I could say that I am an entrepreneur. I am not. As a diplomat, I did, precisely because of a lot of what Jeff just said. In the UN, we try to understand the incredibly big new challenges that technologies posed, how we needed to see technology from the global governance perspective, how we could understand if there was a way in which we could help delivering or building policies to make sure that the double-edged sword of technology could be better used. Now, let me tell you what I see quickly, the challenge of democracy. And I'm very glad that young people are focusing on that through technology. We focus on one of the challenges normally of democracy, which is elections, institutions, authoritarian leaders or candidates or individuals that want to grab power. And sometimes they do it, and most of the times institutions and legal frameworks are enough to contain them, and societies are smart. But there is another challenge, which in my view is much bigger, and we are not focusing enough on it, which is the inability of democratically elected governments to actually deliver, to actually make sure that societies are in fact improving their living standards, societies and communities are in fact improving and strengthening their ability to enjoy the rights. there's a problem of governance there. And the challenge is bigger, in my view, because when governments are not being able to actually deliver what they were elected to deliver for different reasons, that's when the credibility of democracy starts eroding. And that's when autocrats have a pass in the next elections. And technology on that is central. How can technology help institutions, governments, to actually deliver? You called it services, it's true, but it's even more than just services. It's, again, the ability to make sure that people can lead better, healthier, more successful lives. If democracies are unable to produce that, democracy itself, it's really at risk, and the scenario doesn't look good. It's really a pleasure being here, Eileen. Thank you so much again for the invitation.
Beautiful to hear from you. And Aimee?
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. It is an honor for me to be part of this renowned group of judges in the Tech4Democracy initiative. My name is Aimee Senmat. I'm part of Grupo Bancolombia, one of the largest financial groups in Latin America, and based in Panama, leading Banismo. That's the second largest bank in our country. Democracies have been threatened worldwide, and Latin America, representing 8% of the global population, is not an exception. The public satisfaction with democratic systems in the region has been reducing throughout the last decade. This reduction reflects not a problem with democracies themselves, but to the lack of solutions from politicians to the region's structural problems. As per the last barometer of 2021, 49% of Latin Americans support democracy, and 70% firmly believe in exercising voting rights. Unfortunately, we live in a region with deep inequalities, abuse of power, high level of corruption, and profound discriminations for race, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, and gender. These struggles are conspicuous when we consider that only 2 countries in the region are considered full democracies. So how can technology help us preserve the democratic values in our current world? Technology acts as a vessel to the degree that it facilitates access to education, information, and empowerment. As experienced in the pandemic, due to the digitalization, our countries were able to continue working, and drastically the people changed the way we interact. Additionally, it opened our eyes to the possibility of a digital society that is not only more productive and dynamic, but also more resilient. Technology can help to safeguard the democracies by promoting inclusion, efficiency, transparency, and governance. Social networks change the dynamics of politics, reduce the access barriers, and allow us to promote one of the fundamental premises of our democracies, which is informed voting. Tech4Democracy is our opportunity to work together to foster a sustainable growth and prosperity in our region. Very happy to be here and looking to hearing from the finalists' ideas. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I saved some time.
Perfect. Peter?
Thanks very much. My name is Peter Lowen. I'm the director of the Monk School of Global Affairs and Public Policy at the University of Toronto. The Monk School is a place that's committed to identifying the most pressing public problems and equipping students to tackle them and to identify solutions to apply to them. I've got a personal interest in the effects of technology, the disruptive effects of technology on politics, and try to understand how the flow-through of disruption by technology is going to affect the political economy of our societies over the next number of years. I'm also very interested in people who are trying to solve democratic problems, so I'm very interested in hearing their proposals today. The final thing I'll say is that I thought I was the representative Canadian here, but we actually have our consuls here. But more than that, we have an honorary Canadian because Juan Jose was Mexico's great ambassador to Canada for 3 years. So it's a shame to see him go back, but it's wonderful to be here with him today. So thanks very, very much for having me.
Thanks so much. Rana?
Thank you very much, Eileen. Rana Sarkar, I'm the Canadian Consul General to Northern California and Hawaii. And I'm the tech envoy out here for Canada and have been deeply engaged in for the last 5 years, based here, but really as a part of a global effort and working closely with Eileen and her colleagues on the issues of the intersection of technology governance and democracy rights, and how we maintain these new systems. And the surface areas, obviously, of the challenges to democracy are legion. Many of my fellow judges have commented on them. And we are probably at the most dangerous moment for global democracy that we've seen in our lifetime, certainly. And so we're also at the intersection of so many other new Cambrian explosions, including in technology, and a variety of technologies that have the ability to potentially contribute. And this is where, as the skepticism towards technology, which is obviously a significant part of what we're hearing a lot about in the space right now. That aside, the opportunity to apply at scale a number of solutions from authentication to helping particularly civil society participants on their transparency efforts, to making voting more efficient, to empowering citizens is something that I really look forward to, and look forward to hearing from what all of you have to say. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you so much. Allison.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, Eileen, for inviting me. I'm Allison Thorson Bushry, founder of Lemonade Capital. I'm also local. I live in San Francisco, and I'm an alum of the Stanford Business School, so it's great to be back on campus. Throughout my career, I've been on both the operating and investing side, working at Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan Partners, and eBay, among others. Today, I invest mostly in enterprise and consumer technology companies here in the United States, including a few of Jeff's Y Combinator companies. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
I focus on early stage companies, but I have invested in all stages of private rounds of funding up to and including the last round of funding before a company goes public. So to answer the question, for me personally, as an investor, I have a vested interest in innovation that supports stable democratic governments. Businesses need predictability and trust in institutions to thrive. We need to believe in the rule of law, know that contracts will be enforced, investments will be honored. More broadly, there's a theme in the companies and organizations presenting here today, and that is trust. When we look at the world today, one of the biggest and most corrosive issues that we face is a lack of trust in information, news, politicians, even democracy. It creates uncertainty, divisiveness, concerns of corruption. We don't know who or what we can count on. As a result, people, companies, governments hold back from collaborating and investing in the future. We all see it, and we see it reflected in the financial markets. It's bad for each of us, it's bad for investing, and it's bad for economies and societies worldwide. But businesses like the ones presenting here today have an opportunity to start to help rebuild some of that trust and optimism. Technology and innovation applied in the right ways can bring transparency, accuracy, dependability. New businesses can start fresh with a blank slate. They can look at some of the mistakes that some companies have made over the past 5 to 10 years and become leaders who we can all believe in, trust, count on. So I'm very excited to be here today and to hear from these inspiring entrepreneurs who are supporting democracy and freedom, as we heard Lila speak of so passionately.
Thanks so much. Steve.
Great. I'm Steve Blank. I teach both innovation and national security here at Stanford. My previous life, I did 8 startups in Silicon Valley, and when I stopped doing, I started teaching. I co-created something called the Lean Startup Methodology on how to build startups, and then created the curriculum for what's called the National Science Foundation Innovation Core, now in 100 universities, and then co-created something called Hacking for Diplomacy and then Hacking for Defense, both for the State Department and then the Department of Defense. And last year, co-founded the Gordian Knot Center for National Security Innovation here at Stanford, which is working at the center of commercial technology and great power competition. I think as we all understand, technology is both at the center of a dystopian future as being lived by the Uyghurs and others in authoritarian countries, and at the same time, the monetization of our identities for profit by companies and democracies. Outnumbered and outspent, the odds are stacked against citizens who want to defend liberal democracy and democratic values. And so here's hoping these startups and others like them can change the odds.
Great. Lourdes.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lourdes Strecha, founder of the Rise of Privacy Tech, which is the hub for the emerging privacy tech industry. Our mission is to fuel privacy tech and innovation, and we do that by bringing together founders of privacy tech tools, investors who are interested in investing in such tools, domain experts in privacy, chief privacy officers, lawyers, policymakers, academic instructors, and buyers and users of privacy tech tools. And so my background is I'm a Silicon Valley privacy and cybersecurity lawyer. I've worked with more than 100 tech startups, tech companies when it comes to their privacy and security obligations. And I finally decided that I was done lawyering and being an operator and started to build this hub for this emerging space, which is now counting about 1,200 startups that self-identify as privacy companies and counts, I think, 7.5 billion of investments, which is not a lot, but it's quite a bit to demonstrate what the studies have been telling us for years, which is that businesses and consumers want privacy tech tools and that there is a clear marketplace demand for such tools. So why am I interested in privacy tech? I mean, aside from the fact that privacy is a fundamental human right and important in maintaining democracies all over the world, like I said, there is a clear value to privacy tech. Businesses want it, enterprises want it, consumers are also letting us know that they want their services and their tech tools to be private and secure. And per Allison, trust is really important, and privacy tech helps strengthen trust and information relationships. In addition to being an operator, I'm also an angel investor and board advisor to privacy tech startups and cybersecurity startups. And so I want to thank Eileen for inviting me and giving me a chance to contribute to today's Tech4Democracy competition.
Great. So I want to thank all of you, my friends, for being part of this. You've enriched the program amazingly, so thank you. Now to the competition. We have 5 entrepreneurs who will showcase their work on a range of different democracy-affirming technologies. Each competitor will get 5 minutes to pitch, and then judges will have 5 minutes to ask questions. And there are 5 criteria on which the entrants will be evaluated, and I'm going to just quickly name them. Their contribution to democracy, the technological innovation they present, the viability or scalability of the innovation, interest for investors in the broad sense, other stakeholders, not necessarily financial investors, and the quality and strength of their teams. The judges will be doing simultaneous scoring on each competitor on each criteria, and then they will have a chance to go off and have a conversation among themselves and exercise some discretion. So I'm going to ask the fellows from IE University all to come up just to save some time. They are the ones who are going to now individually introduce the 5 one-on-one very briefly. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for your time. As Eileen mentioned, along with Gabriela Moracho and Eugenio Golminelli, my name is Nur. We'll be introducing who brought us here today all together. Most likely all of us in this room have heard at some point that data is the new gold, but probably also most of us have become skeptical of sharing it online. But what if there was a way of preventing all these fears that we have while navigating the internet? It is our pleasure to introduce the first startup of the day, one that places great emphasis on preventing some of the challenges that might arise while navigating the web, which they will tell us about. Please, ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Anna B to the stage.
Hi, everyone. I'm Frances Zelazny, co-founder and CEO of Anonybit. At Anonybit, we're solving 2 main problems. The first one is preventing data breaches, and the second one is preventing account takeovers. We believe that these two problems stem from two main issues. Number one, personal data is stored in central honeypots, and no matter how hard we try, they're impossible to protect. Second of all, we use that data in order to authenticate ourselves when we interact online. The impact of this problem is huge. Fraud is going through the roof. Our democracy is being undermined. Think about political parties that are being hacked. Think about voting machines that are potentially compromised. Think about our public discourse that is increasingly being overrun by bots and fraudsters. It's no wonder that trust in our democracy is at an all-time low. Our answer, get rid of central honeypots and make sure that biometrics are what are used to authenticate people online. Our vision is a world with no data breaches because everything is decentralized. Our vision is a world of secure interactions because we know who we're dealing with, because we're not using our mother's maiden name and our favorite color to identify ourselves. And our vision is a world where we as consumers and citizens know that when we hand our data over to a government entity or to a private sector enterprise, that they will protect our data. I've embarked on this journey with my partners, and collectively, we have over 85 years of experience in tackling these challenges. Me personally, I've been doing this for over 20 years, growing and scaling digital identity and biometrics companies focused on inclusion, social and economic development, and global security. My partners come from the world of fraud and payments. Together, we're committed to solving this problem once and for all. We received global recognition for our work, and we're VC-backed and ready to scale. What we've done is patented a cloud-based system leveraging multi-party computing and zero-knowledge proofs that eliminates the need to store biometric data. We started with biometrics because that's the most sensitive of all personal information. What we do is take biometrics and split it up into what we call anonymized bits, hence the name of the company is Anonybit, and we distribute those bits over a peer-to-peer network of nodes. We never bring them back together again, even to do a match. When it's time to do a match, we break up the face again, and we compare the new bit against its stored counterpart, and we do the computations in parallel. It's the computations that what come back. Like I said, we don't bring the pieces back together again, and we don't even need the original biometric sample. Once we figured out how to do this with biometric information, we then realized that we could apply the same concept to non-biometric data. And so today, we have two products. The first one is called the Anonybit Genie that connects digital onboarding to downstream authentication to prevent account takeovers. And the second one is a decentralized data vault that handles all other types of personal data, like images, photos, could be political affiliations or whatnot. And this product is aimed at preventing the data breaches. They work hand in hand. The market that we're targeting is huge. Nobody is immune. We know that governments are also being breached. And so we're working to protect data and user privacy across the board. One interesting project that we're embarking on right now is with a state government that is looking to distribute payments to vulnerable populations. Anonybit is going to be powering this platform, and so what we're going to do is ensure that only the right people get their payments and their identities are protected. The competition is really the status quo because most of the solution providers are only dealing with one part of the problem. And Anonybit's end-to-end decentralized system is what is able to differentiate us. Our traction since we were funded is tremendous. We're on track to sign 6 customers by the end of the year and to cross the 1 million ARR mark at the end of next year. We're in production, we have important certifications, and we're very excited about our journey. Hopefully, you'll all be able to join us. Thank you very much.
On to questions. Everybody just go ahead, jump in.
Can you maybe talk a little bit about the customers you have lined up in your traction section?
Yeah, so by the end of the year, we should have 2 banks actually in Latin America. And we're working on this project that I told you that's actually here in the US. And there are two. One is a fintech that is building an identity and identity wallet that we're going to be protecting. And then there will be a couple of other smaller banks and organizations.
May I ask you something? What are the main challenges that you have facing in terms of scalability of anonymity across different sectors?
So from a scalability standpoint, the technology is actually built to scale, not to get too technical here, but it's built on Kubernetes, and so the scalability really is not an issue. The way we deploy is that we leverage different types of nodes, and we can do it depending on geography. We can limit it if there are data protection requirements and whatnot, so scalability is actually not an issue for us.
How will banks get biometric data, and what kind of biometrics do they need from their customers?
What kind of biometrics?
And how will they get them from their customers?
How do we get it?
How would they get it from their customers?
So biometrics are captured generally through some kind of a sensor. It could be a cell phone camera, it could be a kiosk or whatnot. We do support, and I've personally written privacy protection laws that require user consent. So there's nothing here that is collected surreptitiously.
But the banks need to get that from
The
everyone.
banks have to, by law in the US and GDPR and Brazilian law, they have to collect consent. Yep.
Have you built an
And they
app
do.
to collect them?
I'm sorry?
Have you built an app to collect the biometrics? Does the bank have to figure it out themselves?
So generally, the customers have the banking app. So we enable an SDK that gets implemented inside the banking app, and the image capture. Typically, it's face and voice with the banks in particular. So generally, they will collect that through the app and use that as a means of authentication. I know we only have 5 minutes, but I'm sure you're familiar with FIDO and other standards, and so these things are already very well on their way to being accepted and adopted.
What would be your next target, your next target market after banks and financial institutions?
So like I said, no sector is immune. One of the projects that we're actually slated for Q1 of next year is actually with a retailer that is doing time and attendance with their employees, and they're also trying to protect their employee data. So the whole back end of this time and attendance system is anonymous. Healthcare, I mean, there's nobody that's really immune.
Could you explain again how this contributes to democracy?
So as I said, this is a technology that is privacy affirming. It essentially ensures that people are who they claim to be for authentication, prevents people from breaking into systems. Pretty much all of the hacks are due to compromised credentials. Anything that can be fished out of somebody can be used to access the network.
So it contributes to democracy in the sense that protects identity, or?
So as I mentioned, I gave 3 examples. One is the use of somebody's credentials to go into a political party and steal voter records. The second is the use of stolen credentials to potentially compromise voting machines. The third is to make sure that there's real people and not bots and fraudsters that are making comments and things online that could impact and influence people's political opinions.
Francis, can you tell me about how you are building your products with, I understand that you're solving privacy problems, but how do you build your own products with privacy in mind, with privacy by design and privacy engineering?
So Anonybit is privacy by design at the core because it's built leveraging multi-party computing and zero-knowledge proofs. So we actually, even internally, we don't have there's no way for somebody inside Anonybit to access any of the records. All the data is completely distributed. And I didn't want to get into too much technical here, but the way the data is distributed requires different pairs of keys across different parts of the network. And so it's impossible for any one person inside Anonybit or outside in order to actually retrieve all of it. And you can't reassemble the pieces either. On top of that, we have ISO, we have SOC 2.
Those are complete.
I'm sorry?
Those are complete already?
Yes, we have
Perfect.
SOC 2 and ISO that are done as of September.
I'm sorry, we're at time.
Yeah, unfortunately, we're gonna have to maybe later.
Okay, so what are the benefits of having a fair and just journalistic landscape in a democratic liberal society? Is this something we ought to take for granted or cultivate to empower those attempting to bring the truth to light? Everybody, please welcome on stage Atlos.
Anyone can post visual evidence of a war crime online. In February, we watched on TikTok and Twitter as Russia mobilized and invaded Ukraine. In China, Russia, and every state without a free press, eyewitness media now plays an essential role in accurate and timely journalism because traditional on-the-ground reporting techniques can be unsafe. Today, visual journalism often starts on social media platforms like Telegram, where citizens post eyewitness imagery. Journalists then catalog and verify this content in spreadsheets, on Discord and Twitter, and even in Google Docs. Finally, they publish original reporting based on this source material. The problem is that these tools weren't built for visual investigations. Spreadsheets and other state-of-the-art systems can't handle projects with dozens of volunteers and thousands of videos. These tools don't provide space for large-scale deliberation. They don't sufficiently structure large investigations, and they can't handle the unique constraints of graphic content. In other words, these tools have become a bottleneck in visual investigations. Enter Atlos, a platform purpose-built for ambitious, high-impact visual investigations.
Our platform, Atlos, is a collaborative workspace for visual investigations. We enforce process, provide space for deliberation, and implement industry-standard best practices by default. Atlos empowers investigators to create an organized, easily searchable catalog of incidents. Atlos helps investigators structure data with attributes that describe what, when, and where what happened. And in the background, Atlos automatically forensically archives source material to make sure that investigators never have to worry about losing crucial evidence. And while Atlos enforces process and structure, we also promote deliberation in a way that Google Sheets never can. Every incident has a feed where investigators can post comments, tag each other, and discuss the details of specific events. And when an investigator edits an incident's data, we track those changes in the feed, so the whole research team has a clear record of the investigative process. How does Atlos compare to other tools being used in the field? Well, while other tools offer discussion features or a database, the Atlos platform integrates both. And with features like automatic forensic media archival and geospatial search, Atlos really is the perfect tool for high-impact visual investigations.
The market for Atlos is large. At the consumer level, there's an enthusiastic community of researchers verifying media online. Large visual investigations teams at organizations like the New York Times and Amnesty International will also benefit from our enterprise model. And in the longer term, we'd like to build a broader Wikipedia-like commons of verified media. Online volunteers are building a granular historical record, one photo at a time. We envision Atlos as the future home for this effort. Atlos is a nonprofit. Our mission is to support groundbreaking visual investigations. So we plan to offer a freemium model of Atlos that anyone can use. We're also mindful of becoming a self-sustaining organization. To that end, we're already piloting a subscription model for large investigative organizations in the news and human rights spaces. And that model already has traction. Bellingcat, the prolific open source journalism group, is actively using and paying for Atlos. Our costs are also extremely low. We're grateful to receive product donations and pro bono legal services, but even without all of that, our costs would be well under $100,000 per year.
And our costs are so low in part because we are a small and nimble team. It is just Noah and me. But even so, we've had a real impact. Atlos is powering high-impact investigations right now. For example, Atlos powers the largest investigation into civilian harm in Ukraine. Each of the blue dots you see here is a real confirmed geolocation of civilian harm on Atlos. Investigators, human rights researchers, and volunteers are working together to create a granular historical record of Russian aggression, Chinese repression, and so much more, adding vivid visual evidence to the public debate. With Atlos, these efforts can scale. To quote a Bellingcat investigator, Giancarlo Fiorella, Atlas is a game changer. Thank you.
Just a quick question. What was your motivation when creating the platform? And how does that contribute to democracy in your view?
I think we saw in February with horror the sheer scale of destruction happening in Ukraine. And we also saw a very inspiring outpouring of effort online to catalog and record these horrors. But we also saw this process breaking down. We saw it sort of falling victim to bad tooling and disorganization. And through prior work that Noah and I had done in the open source investigation space and in journalism, we realized that there was an opportunity here for a real innovation. So we reached out to some partners we had at Bellingcat that we had worked with before, started a design partnership, and now we're very happy to support their work. But really the motivation was, we see this horrible sort of anti-democratic war in Ukraine, and we felt compelled to act.
It really sounds very, very interesting in terms of democracy. The part I really don't understand, but is my lack of technological understanding, is the forensic side. How do you actually do it? Because that's the key. The rest, I see it.
Absolutely. So I'll speak to this one as well. So one of the key things that we do on Atlas is we take a snapshot of all of the source material whenever it's added, and we take a hash of that material and we download it and archive it in a way that is separate from the original source material on, say, Telegram or Twitter. So what's very common in conflict zones is you will have a video come out documenting some event, maybe that's a troop movement or an incident of civilian harm, but what will happen is that it might disappear. Sometimes this is due to automated action by platforms taking down graphic content. As we spoke about earlier, a lot of this content is highly graphic, and so we take several steps on Atlas to deal with that. And so a key question is, how can investigators be certain and confident that the material that they are working with, and in some cases submitting, for example, to the International Criminal Court, is actually what was posted at the time? And so what Atlas does automatically in the background is it takes a snapshot of the page in a way that can sort of, with high trust, confirm that the source material wasn't altered.
So you are confirming the source, but not the authenticity
Precisely.
of the material itself?
Precisely.
So the material, let me push you a little bit, the material could be actually fake or false, but the source somewhere that you identified, and that is, let's say, the certificate?
Right. So the archival that Atlas does is to support human journalists who are doing the actual work of verifying the authenticity of the media. So once it's on Atlas, for example, Bellingcat has a group of volunteers that manually verifies the authenticity of each photo or video.
And part of Atlas is pushing for provenance and tracking provenance of information.
Just a quick follow-up on that. How do you prevent the spread of disinformation or misinformation on the platform? Because, I think a lot of us who've been around for a while have been shocked by how platforms that we thought would just be a great addition to the human enterprise have been, turned to the opposite. And so I wonder if you guys have thought of that as well.
It's a key consideration. So at this stage, Atlas is for small, trusted communities of investigators, meaning everyone is a trained volunteer or professional researcher. And if they are going to add, for example, media that might be misleading, we have a tag for that in the interface. And the core work that they are doing on the platform is that of verification.
How are you ensuring that the physical safety of these human journalists are protected? I understand that the product collects geolocation. So one of the, I've talked to journalists, and one of their concerns is ensuring that, they can continue to do what they're doing. And I guess in general, how does the product secure all of that information, sensitive information that's being collected, including physical location?
That's a great question. And so I mentioned earlier that Atlas enforces process. And in part what that means is that certain incidents on Atlas can be tagged as, for example, threatening civilian safety, when they, for example, include information that could be identifiable for the person who posted the video. And what Atlas can do is it can automatically restrict access to those incidents, for example, to Bellingcat's inner core investigative team, and not share those incidents with their broadened volunteer community. There are a number of other things we do to preserve civilian safety on Atlas, as well as the safety of the people doing investigations on Atlas, which I'm happy to talk about later.
So where are the features coming from? Are they coming from Bellingcat or other people or you guys? How do you know what to build?
Last question, because we're at time.
Just to clarify, which features are you referring to?
The one you built.
So we built the platform, and then Bellingcat is using it and adding its own media.
I mean, you didn't sit in a room, lead-lined room with lightning bolts coming out of your head. So how did you know what features to build into the product?
Absolutely. So we've spent basically February to April and then a longer, more ongoing research phase talking with amateur investigators, professional journalists to understand exactly what they need from a tool like this that can be both general purpose to serve individual journalists and larger communities.
Thank you.
The power of democracy lies within its people. But how do we make sure that their voices are being heard and also that they are being considered for decision-making processes? This upholds one of the greatest values, such as transparency and equity, but also that every citizen is correctly informed and that at the same time they are also protected from the threats and the challenges that democracy may face. Help me to welcome on stage to Civic Bell. Excuse me.
Good afternoon. Thank you for allowing us to present Civic Bell to you as we hope to do our part in ensuring our democracy both endures and thrives. My name is Will. Prior to business school, I'm coming from 10 years in the Marine Corps as a special operations officer.
I'm Anthony. I'm from Switzerland and have a background in public sector management consulting.
With Civic Bell, we're addressing the disconnect, the arguably dangerous disconnect between the American populace and our local to state level government. As you can see here, we recognize that there is a lack of community engagement, which lends us to, vote less, to both participate less, and then causes us to argue more about federal level issues. All this bringing about disunity and apathy when it comes to civic engagement. But there's hope. With Civic Bell, we believe that by providing trust, transparency, and a lower barrier to entry, we enable civic engagement that is more equitable, accessible, and productive for the entire populace. And as you can see, when we compare ourselves to the other civic engagement and/or communication options out there, that's our unique value proposition.
So who's real and who isn't? You can't tell anymore. Current communication means, like Twitter or Facebook, don't do enough to ensure only real people are using their services. Fake accounts and bots spread misinformation at a large scale, even on the local level. To illustrate this, Leela actually pointed it out too. The picture that you see here on the right, they're all fake. They're computer generated by machine learning algorithms to mimic real people. To avoid this, we're collaborating with the well-known and established provider ID.me to ensure only real verified residents are using our services. And we do this without retaining any sensitive documents of our residents. This is all done by ID.me. Additionally, the local political landscape is too complex. In California, you're expected to follow some 50+ newsletters if you want to stay updated in what's happening in your 15 to 20 districts. We maintain one of the most complete geographic information system databases that can map an address to all the pertinent districts, local and elected officials representing those, from your school to state, special districts, all the way to federal and state legislators. This is essentially Civic Bell, the everything app for local politics. We provide as our core product a feed that connects real government accounts to their constituents, and we ensure that only actual constituents can engage with those posts. We are tapped into the most recent census and voter registration databases and election results databases that enable unprecedented insights impossible with current social media means, giving insights into how your constituency reacts, engages, and their most urgent wants and needs.
So we just launched in Mountain View, California. And let me show you a couple examples of recent productive engagement. The first is from State Assembly Member Mark Berman, where he received structured and unstructured input from verified constituents, and then had access to anonymized data on who engaged based against current census and voter registration databases. Right? So then this allows him and his staff to understand better who they've reached and understand them, but then also who they haven't reached and who they don't actually understand. The second example is from City Council member Lisa Matichak, as she asked for input from her constituents on an upcoming City Council decision about city reach codes. And let me read a quote from Lisa after this engagement. "One thing I noticed is that people who don't normally provide input to the council were the first ones to comment on Civic Bell." And that's exactly what Civic Bell is offering these officials. Access to the large percentage of the population that they currently aren't reaching. So where do we go from here? Well, we have the technical mapping capability to easily scale outside of Mountain View throughout California and then throughout the rest of the United States. And then potentially, this is replicable internationally to other democracies around the globe.
Let's quickly finish up by talking about financials. We have both unstructured and structured data that we can overlay with multiple data sources to a housing block level accuracy, creating unprecedented insights impossible with current social media means. That means we can tackle a diverse set of markets, starting with a freemium model for elected and public officials who want to use our platform. But there is so much more than just providing a feed. If you go to joincivicbell.com, you can see how we already today connect you to your local events, all the way to your local news and more. But now we leave it with a thank you and looking forward to your feedback.
Isn't the kind of the magic of polarization that politicians don't need to actually know anything about what their voters want? If they know their position on one small set of issues, they can know their position on all their other issues because people have sorted into different camps of opinion?
It's a good question. We talked to a plethora, over 100, different officials from everywhere from that school district level all the way up to, state level, really. And what we found from them is for a majority, a deep need and desire to reach their constituents and pull that sentiment, especially when you're talking that state, like sub-federal level, that state and below, because that's where you see less polarization. There's a lot of issues that aren't as polarizing. When people actually have that face-to-face discourse and they realize that this is a neighbor of mine or this is someone in my community or in the same district, that ends up bridging that gap that we see divisive at the federal level.
So I had the fortune or unfortune of being a public official in California for 7 years, and the part I was stunned by is that it doesn't work like your civics class. And so I'm just kind of interested in how you're going to capture major donors, lobbyists, and all the other people who actually affect politicians' decisions rather than the populace, which is the game they play. But there's another game being played that doesn't show up at all. So how are you going to deal with that?
Yeah, so I guess when we look at what Civic Bell is, the initial purpose, and then the opportunity, again, once we can get it to scale and get the momentum is kind of limitless. But initially, really it's that connection between the populace and the officials, whereas we work with the Chamber of Commerce and there's business entities or lobbying firms. When we talk about what we're trying to fix is that disconnect between the populace.
But there's a core assumption that they care for real.
True, and one of our hypotheses is it's not that we're going to try to convince the 84% of America that doesn't vote in local elections on average to be more interested politically, but if we can lower the barrier to entry so that someone, your parent that cares about things that impact their kids that they didn't realize isn't just at the school district levels, at other levels, or those people that care about small business decisions, that will be, open them up because it doesn't take hours to follow and engage. You don't have to go to a 6 p.m. town council meeting.
Boy, it'd be great to integrate this with opensecrets.org. All right, thanks.
What would compel anyone who's not an activist, for instance, to use this technology right now? And what kind of journeys are you seeing, in your use cases?
You mean activist in the sense of people who now already attend, like?
People who would typically turn up at a town council meeting,
right,
who are not representative. I think we could all agree of most people.
Yeah, that's a great question. We hope, or we actually see that by enabling very easy and passive access to all of this, that people are starting to use it. And just to refer the quote that Will actually said on the council member of Mountain View, that said that she saw a lot of engagement from people who don't usually show up. It's because You can engage with however you want. You can download the app, you can use the website, you get a push on your phone with a single survey question. You can just answer it right from the home screen. And that way we hope that passively you can engage more easily because the barriers to entry are lower. You don't need to figure out who those elected officials are, when a council meeting is, who's responsible for water or whatnot.
If I could ask just one more question. So it seems there's two things you're giving representatives. One is that you're giving them kind of accurate demographic, economic profiles of their districts, and people might think they have that, but they don't. And the second is you're giving them some opinion, right, or some sentiment or some preferences from voters, right? The first thing's dead easy, right? I mean, any graduate student can put the community survey and all voter data into a GIS in a couple of days, right? So the valuable part is citizens giving their views and their preferences over issues to politicians, right? So how many people do you have to get to scale, and how are you doing in Mountain View? How many people are using the app, telling local representatives what they actually want them to do on issues?
Yeah, and then first off, on that first point, the value is also that you're able for those officials to know who they've reached and who they haven't out of those demographics, because they tend to get the same 50 people that they hear from overwhelmingly. But no, on that second point, so when we talked to, Mountain View, for instance, as our pilot, 80,000-ish population, and from the city council, one of the current mayor, he's like, if you can reach more than 3,000 people, then you've already reached more than my newsletter goes out as the mayor of the city, right? And now he doesn't even know how many people have opened that email or responded or, interacted with it at all. And so already, we've seen, a majority of the people that responded to Lisa's were people that she had never heard of before. She recognized, a couple at the end, but the fact that she gets new people is kind of mind-blowing for her.
Thank you very much. We're at time.
All right.
As we know, diversity and belonging programs are a top priority for both governments and corporates nowadays, but the data required to create these programs comes from individuals. Individuals that seek to be both represented and preserving their privacy. And this is the exact challenge that our next company seeks to solve. Please help me welcome Safe Porter to the stage.
Hi, thank you all so very much. It's wonderful to be here today. I'm very excited about it, as is the rest of our team. Insights and feedback from individuals are key to policymaking diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. Individuals have very valid concerns around privacy, around the security of holding diversity information alongside other contextual information, and around, in this dangerous moment, around their safety when either reporting inclusion feedback or talking about their diversity identity data as a marginalized group. Representation is critical. And if you want to give people a voice, the first thing you have to do is show them that you're listening. But privacy is paramount, and the best thing that you can do, the most important thing, is to show people that you care about them and their privacy. Individuals shouldn't have to choose between informing policy and organizational culture and their privacy, which is why we created data protected by Safe Porter. Apparently. Our technology allows individuals to safely provide honest answers and candid feedback, maintaining control of their data without Safe Porter knowing their identity, and giving organizations the quality data, insights, and reporting they need only in the aggregate, which is the only way that they need it, even for state and government reporting. Our tools protect individuals, and they eliminate organizational risk around the data related to diversity, inclusion, and equity initiatives. Our clients have the data they need to build policies and refine their programs based on, I'm just going to do this, based on, otherwise I'll talk all day, I'm a lawyer, and refine their programs based on diversity, trust, and privacy. We bring innovation, security, and privacy by design to diversity and equity reporting and organizational surveys. In addition to trust-related issues, standardized gender and race categories and privacy concerns inhibit fulsome representation and limit the questions that organizations can ask. Reliable DEI data benchmarking and insights by industry and region simply do not exist, and privacy laws add exponentially to the data risk for organizations. To democratize the collection of diversity and equity data, To democratize the collection of this data, we need to assure individuals that their data is within their control and cannot be traced to them, and to provide a system to secure that process. Our privacy by design tools promote accountability for organizations and governments around their stated goals. They isolate diversity data from the direct and contextual identity information, and we create safety and trust. We are a serverless software as a service and data trust with distributed zero trust infrastructure, geographically isolated data, and ERP integration that preserves privacy and the access and control data rights of individuals. Our vision is representation without invasion, and our mission is making trust-based diversity programs available and global insights available to all organizations without organizational risk or risk of harm to individuals. Because transparency and accountability and integrity are essential to trust, we are a certified B Corporation focused on and accountable to both our social impact and our impact on the environment. We distill data and feedback from individuals and vendors into insights and organizational and government reporting that our clients need. We have a 3-year subscription model with a fixed price per activated survey ID for employee, member, or student. And we have a one-time integration fee with fixed costs. Okay, I'm just going to keep going. Our market is limitless by industry or region. It's pretty much every organization that has a DEI mandate and every global organization trying to collect that data. Our accrual-based projections show that they display that we are infinitely scalable. We're already deployed in 7 regions and 7 languages. And because we are integrated with our clients' systems and communications, we are very sticky. SafePorter and our data protection tools stand apart from the competition. I'm going to have to keep going. We have a number of built-in differentiators, not the least of which is being first to market, ensuring that we're privacy by design, that we are transferless with regard to data. And I think I'm so low on time that I will keep moving and make sure that you understand that between my co-founder, my technical co-founder, and myself, we have over 45 years of experience in data protection, privacy and security engineering, and software development. We also have a sterling advisory board based in DEI, and that's us. I want to be respectful of time. Thank you.
Could you talk a little bit about sort of where you are in terms of customers and traction?
Absolutely. So actually, we've had many multinational billion-dollar making organizations, Fortune 600, come to us, find us. So we've had a lot of good luck there. It takes a while to ramp up because they're still sort of understanding you want the data. You can't have the data between privacy and DEI. Our clients combined have over 10,000 employees in 7 different countries. Right now, our current clients, and that's where we are. We are ready to scale and build bigger, but we have very happy clients. I don't know if I answer your question. The look on your face says no.
Are they currently paying customers?
Yeah. Yes, sorry. Absolutely. And they are recognizable names. But they're big companies that are using us. And one of them actually said they had a privacy engineer at the lead of the team. It was a very big privacy team that said, they want me to build something, but we can't build something better than what you've made because us holding the data doesn't make sense. So we started with them in Europe, and that's where we are.
I hadn't heard in the United States anyway that the biggest barrier to the diversity initiatives in companies was the privacy of the data. Is this mostly a global problem and not in the US?
It's absolutely a global problem. And in fact, privacy laws, as many of you know, in Europe and other countries, the proliferation of privacy laws and the fines attached to it has made it a risk for companies, and has made it, in some countries, has made this privacy by design and default approach a necessity. In fact, it's not the strongest argument, but I would say we're so inexpensive that you don't actually have data minimization if you're not using us and you're collecting DEI data in Europe.
So are your early customers US companies or foreign?
We have a Canadian company, we have US companies, and we have European companies.
How many paying customers do you have?
I don't want to answer that question. More than 3. Is that okay? I mean, it's
That's fine.
So, sorry, I didn't mean to be rude in any way. I just
believe in privacy.
I believe in privacy. Well, also, I didn't ask some of the bigger customers to disclose because I don't want you to judge us based on what we're doing. It's a simple idea, it's important, and it's needed. No more questions? I feel like I was so rude. I didn't mean to be rude. We have a nice posture with regard to marketing that doesn't suggest we have more customers, but it doesn't push us away from that. And so I just want to maintain that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And last but not least, have you ever thought about how future cities will look like? What your neighbors, co-workers, government representatives, and fellow citizens have to say or want to know about anything at all? This is what motivates our next startup, one that is greatly contributing to the advancement of what got us all together here today at Stanford, democracy. Everybody, please welcome Simplicity's team.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear excellencies, my name is Jakub Janega. I'm very proud to be here today. I'm a CFO and a founding partner at Simplicity. Simplicity is a super app for cities where you can find everything in one place, right there, just in your pocket. But first of all, let me introduce you our story. We founded Simplicity 2 years ago in a small country in the heart of Europe called Slovakia. One of our founders' father, he was running for a mayor in a small city part in the capital of Bratislava. When we sitting down together before his campaign, we were thinking what should we bring to him and how we can improve his communication with the residents. He said that one of his major problems is disconnectivity between him and his residents. This how we came up with an idea, creating an app through which he will be able to send push notification and even more, publish information. He won the election actually, and he's mayor right now, and he uses Simplicity as his main communication channel these days. Right after that moment, in 1 year, we signed a contract with over 50 cities in Slovakia using our app. After that, we sit down together as a company and we decided to go globally. As a pre-seed and seed investments, we raised over $8 million. And we choose to move to Palo Alto, California with our company. In the United States, in 6 months, we got over 25 cities using our app, including majors as Miami and New York City. And we also became an official app of Bay Area. We started in Menlo Park, actually. That was our first app. We have 10 cities in our waiting list right now, including Atlanta, Georgia, Denver, Austin. But before that, let me show you a quick example how the mayors are announcing the app these days.
Get your phones out, New York. The City of New York has partnered with Simplicity to create a one-stop app that provides New Yorkers and visitors with city updates, emergencies, information, events, and more. And best of all, it's free. It's simple. Go to the App Store or Google Play and search Simplicity. Download the app and select New York as your city. New York City is the capital of innovation, and together with Simplicity, we are bringing our city together like never before. So, New Yorkers, spread the word. Tell your friends and neighbors. Download the app today and stay in the know.
As some of you might know, we are also bordering the Ukraine. At the beginning of war, one of our founders traveled all over Ukraine to meet this guy in person. He is the mayor of Kiev. His name is Vitaly Klitschko. And we actually gave away the Simplicity app to city of Kiev as a humanitarian help. And they used a Simplicity app as a main communication channel during the war.
Right now we make a video from Kiev, mayor office, capital of Ukraine. I want to say for Slovakian boys who help Ukraine right now with software which help and gives service to our citizens.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you very quickly our competitive team. Juraj and Andrej, they are founders, serial entrepreneurs. They also founded a startup accelerator back in Slovakia. And they also wrote 2 books, best-selling books in Slovakia in the early 20s. Miguel Gamino, he is ex-CEO of New York City and San Francisco, and also ex-vice president of MasterCard. Colette Saman, she runs an NYC ID program with over 2 million New Yorkers. Robert Lesko, who is our chairman of the board, is former managing partner at Morgan Stanley. And also we have Stephen K. Benjamin, who served as a 17th mayor of Columbia, and he is also president of the mayors of the United States. We also did a small celebrity round with such investors as, for example, DJ D-Nice or Snoop Dogg family. So what is Simplicity? Simplicity is a city in your mobile phone. You can find city updates, emergencies, all aggregated news, not just even from the city hall, but also from other city institutions. For example, fire department, police department, health, or schools. You can vote in polls, you can see even calendars, what's happening in the city, or when the trash is collecting in your street. You can pay for parking tickets, or even see pet directory. Thanks to Simplicity, 100% of the information are verified and without hoax, disinformation, and fake news. It means that Simplicity strongly contributes to democracy by promoting democratic values, such as access to information, transparency, and fairness. $4.2 trillion are yearly paid to local government. Through Simplicity, users will be able to pay not just for the parking tickets, but also for their bills, for their taxes, and even buy a Metro card. We use this artificial intelligence to organize the information mix in your app. It means that we are showing just those information which are interested to you. Thanks to those functionalities, 70% of our users have turned on notification. And in less than 6 months, Simplicity apps gets between 10 to 20% of households penetration. So ladies and gentlemen and excellencies, let's bring the Simplicity to the world. Thank you very much for your time.
Just one question, if I may. I didn't understand if there is interaction other than paying services, if there is interaction between the people and the authorities, or is just basically getting information about everything on the city?
Yeah, there is a two-way communication actually. First way is that you are getting the notification and information from the city. And the second way is that, for example, you can report some issue within the city. So you are going through the street and you can see the broken light. You will take a picture of the broken light and you will send it to the city. And based on your GPS location and based on the structure of the information, it will go directly to the city. So this is like two-way communication.
Would the system follow up after that?
Yes.
Saying, okay, it was repaired, so you get a...
It depends, of course, of the city official and their agenda. Because they are replying, it gets directly to the city official email.
How are you getting people to download the app?
This is a very good question. As you saw, the mayors are standing very strongly behind the app, and they are announcing actually the app. This is the first step. Second step, that we are using all the existing communication channels within the city. For example, newspapers, we are using their website, even social media to promote the app. And thanks to those communication channels, we have such a penetration. Actually, 70% of our users are weekly active. That's our ratio for now.
How would you define Simplicity as a successful company? What will be the key driver for you to define it?
Can you be more specific with the question?
Yes, in terms of revenue generation, in terms of how many companies, it's going to be like a worldwide app for all cities around the world. How do you foresee that? What will be your...
I'm sorry, I cannot hear you very good.
For instance, are you planning to launch it globally? Do you foresee to implement not only in the US, but also other countries, other regions? What will be your expectations and definition of success?
Right now we are, this is a little bit confidential, but I will tell it. We are in the middle of the other round, investment round, and our next milestone is to get 1.5 million users in New York City. Then we would like, at the third quarter of 2023, we would like to get 100 cities in the United States. And from this moment, and also based on our cap table, we will see if it will be Europe or Asia or any other continent to expand.
Thank you.
But we are ready, and we will definitely.
So do you plan to monetize the users?
We are not planning to monetize the users.
But?
What we are doing right now in Slovakia, we have. Yeah, I have a answer for a question. In Slovakia, we have white label app, which means that every single city have the app built on their preferences. It's tailor-made app, and every single city of those 50 cities are paying us monthly as a prescription. But we are not going to be this model in the future. Here in the United States, we choose the different model. We have multi-tenant app where you can find all the cities and you can choose between the cities. And the app is free for the cities and even for the residents. So as you saw, $4.2 trillion is a huge potential of the payments. And we will have the payment gateway and payment wallet. It will be maybe called Simplicity Wallet in the app, through which you will be able to add credit and pay for your bills. This is answer for your question.
Okay, I think we're at time.
Thank you very much.
So one last round of applause for the whole group: Anonybit, Atlos, Civic Bell, Safe Porter, and Simplicity. Thank you so much. So before the judges step out to deliberate and select the winner, we have a special treat. It is a thrill to welcome our keynote speaker, Ambassador Samantha Power, the former U.S. Permanent Representative to the United Nations and current Administrator of the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID. Samantha is one of the leading figures in the Biden administration working to advance democracy internationally. As Administrator of USAID, she has a unique vantage point from which to observe and deeply understand how access to technology can spur economic development, and also the extent to which democracy can be a vehicle for spreading democratic values around the world. I have to say, I had the great fortune of working with Samantha during the Obama administration when she was point person at the NSC on multilateral and human rights issues, and I was in Geneva with Juan Jose at the Human Rights Council. And I can tell you from that experience, when Samantha is your point person, and she's your champion of your issues, there's just nobody better than having her be the one to advocate for you. Samantha's going to take a few minutes to share her thoughts on democracy and technology, and then she's going to engage with all of you in Q&A, when she actually preferred using most of her time engaging with you. So thank you, Samantha, and welcome.
Thank you so much, Eileen. No need for that. Thank you. Everything that I just at the very last minute heard Eileen say about me, I would say about her. She is the greatest co-conspirator a girl can have. I really miss working with you day to day, but I'm excited that some pretty daunting real-world challenges have brought us back together in the form of this collaboration and others. Eileen's also kind enough to serve on an advisory board here at USAID that's really important to our strategic thinking about the direction that this development and humanitarian agency goes in. So Eileen, great to see you virtually. Can't wait to get out there for lots of reasons, but not least to see you. Thanks to Stanford's Global Digital Policy Incubator, such a great idea. Back in December 2021, some of you know that President Biden convened the first US Summit for Democracy, which brought together countries united by their belief in free societies. The second Summit for Democracy is going to convene in March, so 4 months away, 4+ months away, to further these goals. The Global Entrepreneurship Challenge stemmed from that first Democracy Summit, and it assembled global technology innovators to champion human rights. And I have to thank our partners, the Department of State, part of the US government like us, Microsoft and the IE Business School in Madrid for helping launch today's Venture Day as part of that effort. I think we're gathered today because we all understand the same truth. Global democracy everywhere is threatened by technological advances. And I have to say, as somebody who came of age when people were predicting the end of history and the triumph of liberal democracy, the way that sentence was written was really, really different back then. Eileen knows it was global democracy everywhere is advanced or rendered inevitable by technological advances. So many people did not see coming, quite the extent of the challenge that we are now facing. So we see governments, when they control advanced technologies, especially in autocratic regimes, but also in democracies with more repressive tendencies, we see those governments using technology to surveil, to censor, to repress. In Russia, large media sites outside the control of the state are banned, as you well know. In North Korea, despite all the best efforts by many on the outside to provide technology tools, some of which have penetrated very discreetly, but citizens have almost no access to outside information because of state control. And in Iran right now, notwithstanding the creative use of some tools by this very diffuse and courageous protest movement, government forces are using technology to surveil protesters, to track their phones, and of course, to spread disinformation. To give a sense of the scale of the challenge, of the 3.8 billion people who have internet access as we speak, 75% of those people live in countries where governments last year arrested and jailed people for expressing nonviolent political or social views online. Abuse, of course, also occurs when technology is wielded by private actors. Unchecked hate speech can rapidly spread through social networks, can incite extremists, fuel division of all kinds, fuel violence, political, ethnic, gender-based violence. Sophisticated spyware has been developed by private actors that can evade defenses and expose the personal information of journalists, activists, and all kinds of truth tellers around the world. And in the past 3 years, really more than the past 3 years, but really heightened in the last few years, just the power of misinformation and disinformation, much of it created by private individuals. And that misinformation, disinformation, threatening election integrity, public health, and we saw in the COVID context, falsehoods about political figures, lies about voter fraud, and again, just general harm to civilization, you might say, and a harm to individual and collective welfare. Regardless of whether governments or businesses, private actors are in control, the technology, of course, is not staying behind a country's borders. It is being exported to foreign actors that are using these tools to curtail rights. So the misuse of technology erodes trust, minimizes individual consent, and stifles human rights. Rights that include the right to safety or security, the right to privacy, the right to peaceably assemble. But whether that technology is in private or public hands, it doesn't, of course, have to be a force for corrupting democracy. It can be a tool for strengthening it. And I've always appreciated, Eileen, your leadership on this as one who came from a very knowledgeable background in the Bay Area to the Human Rights Council. Really, I'm sure you'd admit you were behind the times, but way ahead of the times in terms of intergovernmental attention to this. But all of us, learning from those of you who have been raising these issues for some time. I think with the ideas of the people gathered there today, you are demonstrating a future for tech that respects individual rights. When we implement technologies that respect rights, we can make a more democratic world. Through your actions also, you are empowering and inspiring other technologists to develop rights-respecting solutions. This should all be further along, but we are where we are, and we have to accelerate progress toward a rights-based mindset as we think about technology. At USAID, we have launched our Advancing Digital Democracy initiative, which is meant to help promote digital democracy. We have 80 missions around the world, programs in about 100 countries, and this ADD initiative includes helping governments advance legal and regulatory initiatives, which are hard enough to secure in this country, in the United States, but you can imagine in some developing countries how challenging it is to get the regulatory environment right, increasing investments in rights-respecting innovation, and supporting organizations that are holding governments and companies accountable for a democratic digital ecosystem. We are also currently working with technologists around the world to develop the Tech Code of Ethics, which creates a set of principles developed by technologists for technologists. So we are a bit player in that, but definitely an actor who, with the New America Foundation and others, wanted to spearhead, nudge that along, but the technologists now coming together the same way doctors pledge first to do no harm. Technologists need to agree on a shared set of ideals that they hold dear, that are non-negotiable. These are steps that we as a government are taking to usher in the changes we hope to see. We have right there in the room with you all, Vera Zachem, a tech native who leads our digital democracy efforts. Vera, if you haven't already, please raise your hand or stand up and be noticed. If you would like to hear more about the work that we are doing and how we might be able to partner with you, please talk to Vera. And as you develop new technologies, as we know you are doing and will do, please keep democratic principles in mind. Think about features that can be designed to protect privacy rather than to subvert it. As you think about hyperscaling your next product, consider how others might use that product to sow disinformation. And as you focus on the user, as all of you do, as you think about these tools, please focus on users in countries in the global south that may not have the same rights or protections that we do in the West, and think about what that could mean. The only way to develop and deploy technologies that enhance democracy is to do so with intentionality from the start, rather than trying to reverse or backtrack from unintended consequences of products, consequences that one hasn't even taken the time or built the space into one's creative process to even try to foresee. So you have great power, and with that power comes great responsibility, and we are here to learn from you, to listen to you, and to partner with you as makes the most sense. Back to you, Eileen, and I'm eager to take questions or comments from the audience. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Everyone, please join me in thanking Administrator Samantha Power. And I want to take this time to field the Q&A, so please raise your hand. We have a couple of mics. We'll just get started all the way in the back.
Hi, Administrator Power. Thank you so much for being here today. So in your first book, you talk a lot about the idea that the U.S. has a sort of responsibility to condemn or take responsibility for international atrocities. And I'm curious to see where, if anywhere, you see this failure manifesting today with regard to digital rights or surveillance or misinformation or just other technology-related conflicts generally.
Well, I think that this space is far more Hobbesian than is in anyone's interest to have it be. And so if you take places where, for example, like Myanmar, where the UN has documented a connection between the use of the Facebook platform and the commission of genocide, ultimately, but certainly atrocities in the run-up to outright genocide. I think there's a recognition that the information platforms, the propagation on the platforms outpaced the ability to even think about content moderation. And that's really true, in a lot of places. I will say, and it puts a lot, again, on a developing country's infrastructure, which, any private sector or public sector actor would have to know going in is very underdeveloped. So if you don't have that content moderation structure in place at the outset, if no one knows who the 911 is, as some lie or some incitement to violence is going viral, as happened in Myanmar and happened to a large extent as well in Sri Lanka, and there's no one has any knowledge of who to call, and if they did call, there wouldn't necessarily be the language expertise even to read, never mind to moderate. That's a problem. And I think we've been in touch as an agency that operates abroad with some of the key social media platforms, and they've come a long way. But I think that core structural challenge of content generation outpacing content moderation exists today. It exists in the United States, and it exists certainly in countries that where there are very few checks and balances on what, for example, U.S.-based companies are doing. So I'd say that to start, and then what I was starting to say before is that as an individual who was actually present in the Situation Room, in 2016, also when there was large-scale state Russian interference in the U.S. election, taking advantage of the broad accessibility of our open systems, of our open internet, of our open platforms. There you really felt, normally when you're in the Situation Room and something is happening that has such profound consequences, there are a series of levers at your disposal. But it is actually unlike the kinds of things that I described in A Problem from Hell, where you have a lot of tools, that being the book that was referenced, a lot of tools in the toolbox that can be deployed: economic sanctions, mobilizing UN peacekeepers, denunciation by the government, visa bans, asset freezes, no-fly zones, arms embargo. These are tools in the U.S. government's toolkit. When it comes to these platforms and these private actors, the government itself, is many steps away from having those levers at its own disposal, really complicating the ability of a state to make a difference in real time, other than through suasion and through advocacy, and with the companies. And so that's where it's out of my lane, but the debates happening in Europe and the United States about what the appropriate relationship with the state and some of these platforms is, where that comes in. Again, it's not my area, but certainly, it would be ideal in the near term if social media companies that had the kind of influence and whose platforms could be abused in a manner that carried such stark human consequences, if they thought analogously to governments, as in, what is the toolkit that we have to mitigate harm? And how do we employ that toolkit on an emergency basis, but much more importantly, on a prophylactic and prevention basis? These are the kinds of conversations we have in government all the time about atrocity prevention and response, but it's not clear, again, that they are happening with the intensity that the real world warrants, outside of government.
Thank you. We'll take 2 questions at a time. Is that okay?
Hi, Samantha. Just building off your last answer, technology is moving very fast, as we know, deep fakes, bots, et cetera, fake news. But business models are very often a motivator to using technology to solve problems. So you want the brightest AI engineers to try and work on deep fake detection, not deep fake generation, for example. And in order to do that, you need customers, paying customers, to motivate startups or innovation in that direction. So is it really a technology, where is the business model for a fake news startup, fake news, management startup? Like, we don't have a paying customer for that, and hoping that the private sector, appeals to its good angels to solve it by moderation, et cetera, is probably not the right solution. So how do you expect the market failure? There's no billion-dollar startup that's detecting and cleaning up the internet from fake news. And it's a huge, huge problem. Why is that? Like, what is the plan to address this sort of market failure? And the BBC has a little bit of an example in that, where the public funds are very available for media generation. But we have a lot of billion-dollar enterprises, Alex Jones and others, who are making a lot of money from fake news, but none on the other side. And I just wonder what a policy toolkit could look like to address this market failure.
And we'll take one more question. We have an intern here from USAID.
Hi, Administrator Power. Thank you so much for coming here today. My name is Kelly Kim. I'm a senior at Stanford, also research assistant for Eileen and Professor Diamond, and a current intern at USAID for the Children in Adversity team. And so I wanted to direct my question more to protecting children's rights and democracy-affirming technologies. So per the Global Child Thrive Act, we obviously have USAID investing heavily in the protection of children from physical harms, but I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about any protocols or policies USAID has implemented to protect children from specifically digital harms that we hope that in the future technology won't infringe on their rights.
I'd say, so on the second question first, and I'll go backwards, that what we need to do as an agency in a more extensive way is not just have standalone programs on children in adversity, but to make sure that all of our programs, and here, for example, in the digital space, have vulnerable communities, vulnerable individuals, marginalized communities foremost in mind. And so, for example, at USAID, I mentioned our extensive presence around the world. I hope that some of you who are there will consider, whether you're in the private sector or whether you're a student, will consider coming and working at USAID. We are hiring, and we're an agency that tries to tackle the world's hardest problems from a public sector vantage point, which is different than a private sector, but boy, do we need expertise from the private sector these days, especially. But, some of the work we do is to engage the host governments, our partner governments on the ground, their legislatures about, what their laws and rules should be as it relates to children, as it relates to privacy, as it relates to user age and consent, just a whole set of things that we might take for granted. Not that we have cracked the code on this by any stretch in this country, but compared to where some countries are starting from as these technologies are flooding in. And so all of that programming, again, needs to be alert to the very specific vulnerabilities faced by children. Again, I would put that in some contrast with how in times past, in generations past, we've had programming, very, very dedicated for the protection of children per se. We still need that. We need it in our humanitarian budgeting, very specific protection programs for children. But if we aren't thinking in the digital area, both about the harms and about the opportunities, right, as it relates to media literacy, if you catch young people before some of the distorting effects of social media take hold and really sharpen their ability to discern without them losing the belief in truth itself, which unfortunately is happening in too many parts of the world, that can make a major difference. So bottom line is in our education programming, in our humanitarian programming, in our health programming, in our explicit digital programming, having children top of mind and a core constituency as well in terms of voice. There's not, if you look at many of the partners that USAID has around the world, in some countries you'd be hard pressed to find anybody under the age of 40 who's actually funded by a longstanding, at least USAID contractor grant. And so really not having dedicated youth initiatives over here, but reaching out and and making sure that the partners that we are contracting with, that we are enlisting in doing our education or our digital or other work, are themselves representative and can give voice to the harms and the challenges and opportunities that young people are confronting. I don't have a great response really to the first very thoughtful, also thoughtful question about market failure. I mean, just insofar as, especially in a room like that one where you have people who've actually made money, unlike your speaker here today, who's a professor and at times and a government official. And so you all know more than I do about how to move markets, I'm sure, or you will forget more than I will ever know about that. But at the same time, I guess I would be less pessimistic. I mean, there are lots of obvious answers there, right? There is what I think was implied in your question, which is, subsidy and incentive, from the public sector. We've just seen with the $360 billion Inflation Reduction Act, finally, a major investment in mitigation. It's also going to have a big effect on, building resilience and adaptation capacity for climate change. And that investment from the public sector is going to yield, I don't have to tell anybody there, but just in spades, much more investment of private capital in those same areas, beyond what anybody can even predict right now. I mean, it's very hard even to model what the invisible hand will do now that has been unleashed. And, there are going to be plenty of actors who would buy an ameliorative product of the kind that you've described, including in developing countries. They may not be able to pay, what a state government might be able to pay, or a health ministry in a developed nation. But I think there would in fact be a market there, or consumers for that. But again, this is outside of my domain. I mean, there's also then on the punitive side and the deterrent side, how do you, and that's what the approach that Europe, I think, is taking in terms of increasing liability for harms. And that's, less of an approach that has been taken to this point in the United States, for sure. But, incentives and disincentives, I think there are a lot of sectors, you tell me, maybe I sound naive, but where someone might have stood up 20 years before the market came into existence and said, the market will never go there. And the combination of incentives and disincentives, created a different calculus for private actors. I would also hope, just as there are just harms that people set out to prevent for their own sake, even when they can't make money off it, that there'd be some appetite to do that. And there the consumer comes in, the advertiser comes in, and, we've seen some of that. I mean, you could argue that some of the reforms that have occurred in the private sector came about not because of state intervention or some legal measure, regulatory measure, and more because there started to be a fear of consumer backlash and client backlash. And so, that's where it comes back to all of us as to what are we demanding of the platforms that we're inhabiting. You're seeing some of that now, in terms of people voting with their feet on a major social media platform, because they're deciding they want it to go a certain way. So there are viral phenomenon that can occur among consumers as well that can impact the cost benefit of private actors, I think.
So Samantha, I have to say, I don't think there is anything that's outside your domain. I've come to believe that there's nothing beyond. So I just want you to know how much it means to all of us to know how closely you're watching these issues, how much you're engaging on tech and democracy, challenges, opportunity, and we look forward to continued conversation with you at USAID. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay.
Remember, we're hiring. Remember,
all of
we're
you.
hiring.
Okay, So now we are up to the end, and the exciting part, we're going to ask the judges to step out of the room for 5 minutes or less to quickly compare notes, while Scott Busby comes up and says a couple things about the U.S. Summit for Democracy and other initiatives, but really you've got just a couple of, all of you stand, Tracy will lead you out the door. We promised you a brief opportunity to deliberate, and this is it, but really, really, really brief. We've got the numbers, and now we just get to weigh in if you don't like the quantitative outcome. Okay, and Scott Busby, who I also worked with a long time, in the Obama administration. He is the Deputy Assistant Secretary for the Bureau of Democracy, Human Rights at Labor at the U.S. Department of State. Scott.
Thank you very much, Eileen. First of all, thanks to you and Stanford for hosting. Thank you to our partners at IE University. I was so impressed not only to meet you, Irene, but so many of your colleagues who have come all the way from Spain for this event. So thanks to you for hosting this event and for organizing all the other events around the world. It's really inspiring to see. And let me thank Microsoft as well for your support for this endeavor. It's an honor to be here today on behalf of the State Department to see the many efforts to develop technologies that contribute to advancing democratic principles. As others have said today, defending democracy around the world is a key foreign policy priority of the Biden-Harris administration, and today's Venture Day makes an important contribution to this effort. And we are so thrilled that Administrator Power was able to join us for this important event as we work in partnership with USAID to advance this vital work around the globe. State Department is very pleased to be the U.S. government partner in this Grand Challenge initiative, which was launched at the 2021 summit. As Samantha already previewed, today the White House announced that the second Summit for Democracy will take place on March 29-30th of next year. The second summit will be co-hosted by several other governments, including Costa Rica, the Netherlands, the Republic of Korea, and the Republic of Zambia, along, of course, with the United States. And this time it will be conducted in a combined virtual hybrid format. There will first be a virtual plenary, followed by a number of regional hybrid summits that will take place in each of the co-host countries around the world. So stay tuned for details on all those various activities. The second summit was intended to be an opportunity to take stock of the progress made on the commitments that were made by governments at the first summit, and we're looking forward to hearing about all the progress that's taken place. As many others have said today, digital technologies hold great potential for strengthening democracy and democratic processes, enhancing civic engagement, and promoting human rights. They can help support fundamental freedoms such as freedom of expression and information sharing. They can help people better engage in political processes, as we saw in two of the presentations made today, and they can enhance accountability and transparency. They can provide a voice to the voiceless and shine light on inequities hidden or ignored for decades. But none of this is a given. We must actively push technology in a direction that empowers democracy and human rights, particularly as we continue to see a growing trend of governments misusing digital technologies to undermine democratic principles. As Samantha and others have mentioned, internet freedom has been on the decline globally. Internet shutdowns have become a popular tool of too many countries to quash dissent. Surveillance technologies are being misused for repression and to perpetrate human rights abuses against journalists, dissidents, activists, and others. And we've seen the spread of disinformation campaigns to meddle in democratic elections, sow division, and undermine trust. The United States is working with a number of our like-minded partners to push back against these phenomena, in part by harnessing digital technologies for democratic progress. We're also seeking to counter the proliferation and use of foreign commercial spyware. Specifically, as announced at the first summit, the United States is leading an effort to develop an export controls regime based on human rights and to expand the number of countries that commit to restricting the export of such technologies to regimes that would use them to abuse human rights. We're also developing a set of model principles that democratic countries can follow in using such tools. Lastly, I'd like to point out that the State Department has already issued guidelines to businesses on how they can avoid contributing to human rights abuses when they use or distribute surveillance technology. So what are the like-minded efforts that we've undertaken? One is through something called the Declaration for the Future of the Internet, which was launched earlier this year with some 60 countries. We're also engaged in something called the US-EU Trade and Technology Council, which includes a working group specifically dedicated to addressing misuses of technology that threaten security and human rights. And last but not least, I want to mention the Freedom Online Coalition, a group of 34 like-minded governments that are committed to protecting and promoting internet freedom. And indeed, Eileen has been a very active participant in that process on our advisory committee. In 2023, the United States will chair the Freedom Online Coalition for the first time, and we're looking forward to using that time as chair to bolster efforts to promote human rights online around the world. Governments, however, are only part of the story. To make technology work for democracy, we need not only governments, but also multilateral organizations, tech companies, civil society, and other stakeholders to come together to renew our shared commitment to responsible, democratic, and safe technological development. All stakeholders have a role to play in this effort, from entrepreneurs choosing to build democracy-affirming technologies to the private sector investing in these technologies. It's a shared effort. And as we've seen, there's no guarantee that any given technology will support democratic values. Instead, we, the people using these technologies, have a collective responsibility to make sure that these technologies are developed and used responsibly. So that's why I and the State Department are so pleased to see all the participants taking part in today's challenge. Your work exemplifies the dedication we will need to ensure that democratic values remain competitive in the global marketplace of ideas and that democracies continue to lead the technologies of the future. I'm excited about this future where innovators like you will pioneer a positive vision for technology and society. So once again, it was a pleasure to be with you here today for this competition, to have the opportunity to hear about so many innovative ideas in this space. And the department thanks you for your hard work and for your participation in this event. Thanks again, and look forward to working with you further on it.
Okay, the judges are returning, and we're going to ask Microsoft to come on up, Lila, and make the award.
Okay, ready? And the winner is Atlas.
So I just want to say you were all outstanding, and we really appreciate you coming and making the pitches, and you've inspired us all. And thank you, thank you, thank you to all the judges. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Carlos Lugat, and I'm the Executive Director of the Center for the Governance of Change that is co-organizing. I'll be very brief because obviously the finalists and the winner are going to receive all the briefing, but all the finalists of the competition receive special credits from Microsoft, software and cloud credits. There's going to be a financial prize for this competition, for the winner, Atlas. And obviously, the winner of each continental competition will compete in a final venture day coinciding with the second Summit for Democracies, and there will be both a financial prize and also there will be mentoring and basically a process of helping your companies grow. So, thank you so much for all the hard work you put into this. I think all the companies were fantastic. It's so refreshing to see so many, so many enthusiasm, and see you in maybe DC in March. Thank you so much.
Well, this has really been a remarkable afternoon and a deeply inspiring one. And two Stanford undergraduates capture the prize. Pretty amazing. I assume you have other things to do with your time than work on this. Hopefully you won't drop out before you finish. I do want to give a very hearty thanks to all of the people, not just the 5 here, who submitted applications, and for the extraordinary and deeply promising presentations and innovations that were presented here today. So I will thank you again by name: Anonybit, Atlas, Civic Bells, Safe Porter, and Simplicity, and thank you for the innovation that's gone into your names, which I really like and admire. Really hearty thanks to our judges, Amy Sent-Mott, Allison Bousry, Jeff Ralston, Ambassador Juan Jose Gomez Camacho, Lourdes Turecha, Peter Lowen, Rana Sarkar, and Steve Blanks. Thanks so much, Steve, for everything you do at Stanford. I want to thank Scott Busby, our longtime partner in the democracy struggles around the world. You're probably the longest incumbent of the role of the Deputy Assistant Secretary, I think, certainly in my lifetime, and that covers the whole existence of the DRL office. And your colleague from Washington, Microsoft, Irene, and your colleagues from IE. And most of all, if I may, I want to thank my colleagues, the Executive Director of the Global Digital Policy Incubator, Ambassador Eileen Donahoe, and our Program Manager, Tracy Navichoke. So stick around if you'd like and schmooze a bit more. Thanks once again to all of you who came from a long distance. Thank you who came just across the street, and I think we leave here with renewed hope and inspiration for what technology can do for democracy and good governance. Thank you.